Hey, Mule and Donkey folks, Dave here, hoping you're having a great Tuesday, and I got a special program for you today. Last Wednesday, we had our biggest online clinic of all time, Mule and Donkey Saddle Myths Busted. You can see I've put the video together today for you, and I've put it together in such a way that you can watch the whole thing in under an hour. And that's today's program. The program went fantastic. I had so much fun. If you were there, you know it really was a great time. Not only was Steve on fire like he usually is, but we had a lot of really great hands-on videos. We had some great photos come in from across the world. We busted 5 of the most common myths as it relates to mule and donkey saddles. And we unveiled a very special offer that's available for a limited time. Free videos that we want to send you when you invest in your first or your next Steve Edwards signature saddle. All of that's in today's program. And then I want to make sure that you see muleranch.com/saddle. Go to that URL. You can click it in the post there in the description of today's video. But you can go there. You can find out everything that we're doing for a very limited time. It's going to disappear. We're giving some free videos away. You don't want to miss out. You don't want to be left with your hat in your hand. You don't want to be saying, "Oh, shucks, I wish I would have known about this sooner." Well, you know about it now. So muleranch.com/summer. Get all the details. We'll talk about it in today's program. But I hope you enjoy it. Again, our best clinic all-time online mule and donkey saddle myths busted. 5 myths that you've probably heard, that you may have even listened to and taken up the advice. And we're here to tell you today there's a better way. And Steve's going to explain exactly how. Enjoy today's program. We will see you soon. Reach out if you have any questions. Support at muleranch.com. All right, here we go. And you are in store for the greatest show on earth, at least as far as it comes to mule and donkey satisfaction. That's right. We are here to talk mules and donkeys. We are doing something that I personally asked Steve to do. I said, "Steve, I would love it if we could do a program all about busting the myths that folks have heard and folks have seen when it comes to mule and donkey saddles." And Steve says, "Well, Dave, I think that's a good idea." So here we are, mule and donkey saddle myths busted. We are so glad that you are here. How are you doing, Steve?
Hey, we're doing awesome, man. I'm looking forward to this show. I've been thinking back, and one of the first things I thought about was Casper. Casper, my first mule. Golly, he taught me a lot. I got an article that I wrote about called setting on the neck of the mule. Yeah. And I sat on the neck of the mule a couple times, man. He tried to buck me off, run me through trees. And the guy says, "I bet you don't want to buy that mule." And I said, "Nope, I want to buy him because I want to learn from him and get even with him." You know, I hated mules. I didn't want nothing to do with him. First mule I saw tried to bite me, kick me. And my boss said, "Well, grab some ropes. We're going to rope that mule." I found out why later on. We roped back both hind legs, spread him apart, threw a blindfold on him, and packed him. Golly, what a mess. But now I love mules. And what I have learned here, folks, I used to repeat what everybody else said. "Oh, mules don't need to be shod. Oh, mules don't need to drink much water. Oh, blah, blah, blah." But I'll tell you what, Dave now has produced quite a show. And I'm looking forward to seeing how this thing goes. And we got some surprises for you too. But I want you to know, folks, that this right here is going to be the show of shows.
Tonight we are focused on mule and donkey saddles, specifically getting all those urban legends and all those myths out on the table and knocking them down one by one. Why? Because we want you to have a happy mule, because a happy mule means a happy ride, and a happy ride is a happy life. You shouldn't be frustrated, feel like you want to toss your hat in and get rid of this thing. We're going to talk you off the ledge a little bit and tell you how maybe some minor adjustments in what you're doing is going to help. Maybe some of the things your mule is telling you things you need to listen to, and hopefully at the end, you're going to have a few things you can walk away with. And like Steve said, we got something special that we're going to be debuting at the end. But with all of that said, Steve, why don't you get us started with the story? You started talking about Casper, and really everything, at least this side of the mule and donkey life you've got, started with Casper. So give us a real quick speed up on when we're about to talk about our 5 myths. Why is the story of Casper important?
It is so important because of what I learned from Casper. I heard all this stuff from other people. I heard these things. And I thought, well, man, I want a mule. I don't have to feed him as much. He don't drink as much water. I don't have to shoe him. He's easy to take care of. All that stuff. I was blown away, And what did I do? I put my Larry Manhan Bighorn saddle on him, bought it from J.C. Penney's for $160, put it on him, went for a ride. Yep, because this guy says, I got a nice mule here, you're going to like him. I thought, well, I couldn't. Everybody said, Steve, you should be riding mules in your country. So from Casper is what I started learning. Remember, folks, there wasn't nothing written in the books about how to shoe one and how to saddle one and what you had to do. Is there any difference between different things, And so that Casper has taught me a lot. So the things you're going to hear now are what I learned over the past 45 years. This isn't just something I picked off from somebody else. Everything here, you're going to see pictures. You're going to see information and this sort of thing. But it's what I learned from the mule that we're giving to you today. And we're dropping the F-bomb on you, ain't we, Dave? The F-bomb free.
That's right. It's our favorite F word around here. We have 5 myths. So our first myth tonight is, Steve, a custom saddle is the best thing that you can do for your mule. Is that true or is that a myth?
That's definitely a myth. So what makes a saddle to start with? You start with a tree, and then the individual person is not a machine that comes up and puts all these parts in place and builds a car. An individual person has to cut each piece and mold each piece, wet the leather, and fit it to the saddle. One of the things that I do here different is that since I've made my saddles the same all the way through for almost 30 years, I actually have a deal that we push a button and it automatically cuts that piece of leather. So we can cut leather for 25 saddles in a matter of minutes. So it takes the individual saddle maker, he has to cut each piece out, put down a pattern, cut each piece out, and go from there. There's no difference, folks, between somebody who customized a custom saddle and my saddle. The only difference is we can produce them quicker because I have cutters that automatically cut every single piece. That's one of the reasons that the saddles are inexpensive like they are, you see? So what do these custom guys do? They have no idea. They've got rigging plates incorrect. They're using different types of trees and say, oh, this tree will work. Or wait a minute. If we measure and set on a tree on a mule in January when he's fat and sitting around, and we do it again in July, we're going to have 2 different measurements. So what are measurements? They don't work. What you got with me, folks, is years of working with mules, going up and down the trails, packing freight, working with cattle, showing as well. All these things. I know when a mule is sore. And I make a living with these animals, and I can't have them sore. So everything you're going to see here is what I learned. Now, I had custom-made saddles made to start with. My saddles 25 years ago that were being made by a couple different saddle makers were what I thought was custom-made. And guess what? 25 years ago, I paid over $3,000 for a saddle to be made by a custom saddle maker. But guess what? I kept having problems. So it wasn't until I started figuring it out through packing, through my pack saddles, knowing my angles, knowing my length of my bars, knowing not to bang on the scapula, a lot of these things, It's not just a matter of one mule, folks. We're talking thousands of mules all over the world. And you're going to see a few of them now. And the donkey world's coming in there now, too. Look at there. That right there is a donkey bone structure. Now, what do we have when we look at a mule? It doesn't stand out and show being a horse. You got the head, you got the feet, you've got the shoulders, you've got the length of the body, but you see that backbone across there? That doesn't change. And that's what I go by. Because if you're going by muscle mass, just in one weekend ride, a mule or a donkey could lose up to 100 pounds. Just one weekend ride. So what do we do now? We have to get a saddle for when I drop 100 pounds? No. What did we used to do? We used to add another saddle pad on there. And when we added that saddle pad, then we tighten up our cinches. Now, guess what? Because we don't have a correct fitting saddle or pad, we add another pad. Now we have to over tighten the cinches to keep the saddle from rolling, because now the saddle sets up off of the off the backbone too far. So that's why I developed the pad. That's why I developed the bars. That's why I developed, and this is imperative, because you see how this bone structure is, where the D-rings are on the saddle. That's important. Now, out of a 19.5-inch bar that's on my saddle, I only want 15 inches actually touching. 15 inches, and that's all. And you can see the rib cage across there. That's why I only want 15 inches. Mainly it's where I set and look at the rib cage. Look how short it is in comparison to your horse.
Here is the second myth that we are busting tonight. My mule would tell me if he didn't love the saddle. Steve, folks message in all the time. Good folks, too. And they say, my mule is just fine with the saddle. I've had this saddle. I had it from my horse, and I'm throwing it on my donkey. He seems to like it okay. He would tell me if he wasn't comfortable. Steve, is that true, or is that a myth?
It's definitely a myth, because we got completely two different bone structures for one thing. But here's the thing. At the beginning, most mules and donkeys will pretty much accept about whatever you put on their back. Pretty much accept it, okay? And the reason they do that is because they're sullen and they brace into pain. So you can't really tell, that they're really, really hurting until later on down the road, when the mule starts tripping, when a donkey starts laying down. I've had them even lay down. Things like that, going downhill. They'll sometimes try to run downhill, or when they go downhill, they shake their head, different things like that. Or they may step to one side. And then here's what we try to do. We try to say, okay, I'm going to get on this mule anyway. Even though the mule keeps saying he's stepping to one side, he's saying, you're hurting my back when you get on. But, because they're sullen, because they brace into pain, we sometimes don't see it I know people tell me they've had the saddle for like 3 years, and then all of a sudden, no, it was actually coming. They just didn't see it. But no, the folks, the big problem that you got is most of you can't really read what that mule or donkey is saying. I've seen client after client come to my clinics, and think they've read that mule, and I showed them it's completely different.
I know that the donkey's going to tell you if he doesn't love the saddle, but it's not going to necessarily go straight to blowing up on you and bucking you off. And so you said some of the things that your mule and donkey are going to do, they're going to be shaking their head. That's one sign they're not loving it. They're going to be tripping as they walk. They're going to step out of the way when you go to put on the saddle, or they're going to try to step off to one side when you go to put on the saddle. They're going to try running downhill. And then worst case, they start going to bucking and blow up on you. But what you said, after all of that, I said, but isn't it true that they might not even show any of those signs at all because they brace into pressure? They make that pressure their friend, so to speak. And you said, oh yeah, that's true. They're stoic, and they get that from the donkey. So yeah, any other signs or any other ways that folks can tell, oh, okay, maybe my animal isn't loving it?
Well, there's not really much more, Dave, other than people say they see the wet spots and know that it's the right fitting saddle. No, wet spots doesn't show if a saddle is fitting or not. Because again, on my 19.5-inch bar, only 15 inches I want it to really sit on the back. I don't want the front part of the saddle touching in the scapula area, okay? So sometimes they'll show it when you pull the saddle off and you've over-tightened the front cinch, and in that area it's really dry, sure, then their skin shows it, okay? Their hair shows it. When you see white hairs, that is hair follicles that have been broken down because of pressure point from you over-tightening the saddle. Even my own saddle, if you over-tighten that front cinch, it will cause it to be dry. Why? Because the back of the saddle is up, and as you're setting, it's pushing up and down like this, and it's restricting the working area of that scapula and the muscle area in behind it.
Myth number 3. Here's the third myth we're busting tonight. You can ride with a crouper or you can ride with a britchin. It don't make no difference. Steve, is that the truth or is that a myth?
It definitely makes a difference. You know, you got to think about that tail is attached to the spine of that animal. And so, yeah, that tail lays down around the hump. Do you see it? You see how that tail is all bone and it goes right into the backbone. All right. Now, what happens is the underneath that tail is the softest part of that mule next to his nose. His nose is probably as equal. So what happens is when that tail gets sore from that crouper rubbing on it, then we loosen it up. Then we have the tail that's hanging down, and then we loosen it up, and the mule kind of takes some pressure off that sore place on his leg. Now we create a cantilever, and now that crouper pulls like this and breaks the mule's back. Now, it's folks, I had one year, I had 3 people call me within a few months of each other. One guy been riding mules for over 30 years. Another been riding mules for over 20 years. Another one just had her best mare, and she was bred, and she had a 3-year-old that she was starting to ride. And everybody wanted me to put a crouper ring on the saddle. I said, nothing doing. I am not going to destroy these animals just because you're too lazy to understand the breeching. That's about what it amounts to. Because what happened was, here's that tail hanging down, and then they loosen up the crouper, and then the mule brings his tail up a little bit. So he takes some pressure off that sore spot, and then he's going downhill, and the tail comes up, and the crouper goes like this, and I'll bring it. Now, the idea of a breeching is to be able to hold the saddle back when it's going downhill. Now, what you do is you loosen up the breeching on the side straps, loosen 2 notches, and drop the breeching down so that they have to set on the breeching to hold the saddle back. Now, the breeching itself is not the number one thing to hold the saddle back. What really holds the saddle into place is the rear cinch. It is your anchor point. Because if you adjust the breeching, okay, yes, that will help you, but that's not going to take care of all the weight that you have when you're running downhill, and you have the weight of the person and the weight of the saddle, and you're going downhill. That saddle's going to want to go. If you don't adjust your breeching, your mule is going to be unhappy because the saddle is going to be hitting the scapula. If you don't tighten the rear cinch, your mule is going to be unhappy because he's hitting the scapula. So here's what I do. I'm on top of a mountain, and I'm looking down saying, okay, I want to get down that canyon, come around over here and pick up that trail. So I get off my mule, I take a break. I loosen up the cinches on my mule, I loosen up the breeching, I bring up the back of my saddle, and I shake it up and down a few times, and I let cool air go through it. Then I put the saddle back into place. I adjust it so it's 2 inches behind the scapula. I tighten my rear cinch first. I then adjust my breeching. I loosen 2 notches so it hangs down and the mule has to set on the breeching. Now, the problem with the breeching is, especially you horse owners, you take that side strap and you attach it to the cinch to try to keep that cinch from going forward. That don't work, folks. It don't work. That front cinch is already at an angle. It's at an angle because the mule carries his weight down low. Horses carry their weight up high. That mule's hourglass belly toward his shoulders. So what's that cinch doing? That cinch is pulling the saddle forward because of the way the mule is built. That's why I tell you, do not tighten the front cinch. And then we run a strap to it. And now we start burning the hide on a mule on the back because we got a breeching now. Instead of being at an angle with the rump, we got it straight, and only about this much, about 1 inch out of a 3-inch piece is actually touching the mule's back. So there you go. The breeching is extremely important. A crouper was designed for 3 to 7 pounds. It was designed for harness on pulling a wagon, and it was designed to go around the tail to keep the breeching from climbing up the rump. Because what happens is, on a breeching on harness, the top plate has to be forward toward the point of the croup. On the top plate on a mule for a saddle, it needs to be halfway between the point of the croup and the dock of the tail. So do you have to have a breeching? Absolutely. Okay, you will someday pay the price if you're only using a crouper. And believe me, folks, I don't want to be there. I've already been there, done. If there's an easier way to do it, I'd have done it.
The bone structure on these animals comes from the daddy, the donkey. And it's extremely important that we understand there's going to be certain pressure points that's going to create problems. So if you notice the back of my saddle, it's open here. Open. Notice I have latigos all the way around so that I can evenly distribute the cinch. Plus, on top of that, I don't have to worry about pulling up on it and jerking it and making them sore. So notice this saddle somebody's taken my saddle and changed it. This is an older cowboy. Notice how the back end is closed up and they put a crouper ring. I've never put a crouper rings on any of my saddles. Now here's the downside. Notice underneath here how it's been sewed up. So that's going to rub on the spine. We've got a couple different mules here I want to show you. You'll be able to see what it does. Notice they also put billets on the right side and the left side. The problem with a billet is you have to really pull to try to get it up to that next notch. Well, then you teach your animal how to blow air in his lungs. You go down the trail and they're trying to get comfortable and they finally let loose, and now your saddle is going to be even looser. So you see one of the reasons that I did the back of this and how this is open is so that it does not put pressure upon that spine. Don't change the design. Everything here is meant to be able to keep the animal comfortable. That's really, really important.
Got my Steve Edwards knife here.
Yes.
And that's Dan's saddle, so he can do it.
It's the ring.
Oh, the ring? Yeah, okay. Because you see, this should be wider apart. So what they've done is they've moved the skirt out. At least you got that off of there. That's going to help a lot. Of course, with Brent's new saddle, he ain't going to have to worry about it. Yeah.
And
Yep.
you don't have that.
I thought that was pretty fun right there, taking that Steve Edwards business card and rectifying a problem somebody else created, but they didn't realize it. So, Steve, I've got these pictures right here, these close-ups. You can see right there, they installed that crouper ring, and you get calls from people saying, hey, will you install a crouper, or will you modify the saddle here or there? And then, of course, we can't stop folks from doing stuff once they get it, but no, this saddle is designed over 40 years based upon what you learn from the mule. And I wish I had gotten a picture of the spine to show those bumps out the back of the spine. But you can see right there how not only is the back of your saddle open, but on the saddle pad, there is a loose section right there in the corner to accommodate that spine, right? That elevated area on the saddle pad, right?
Exactly. A lot of people contact me and say, hey, this saddle's setting up too high. No, it's not. It's setting where it needs to be set. Now, some of you got a little bit flatter back than normal, but as that mule loses weight going down the trail, that saddle is going to even do better, you know. So it all depends, too, on the type of saddle pad that you use.
Myth number 4. Steve, folks message us all the time asking about different saddles, asking about can you design a saddle, a dressage saddle? Can you design an English saddle for the mule or the donkey? Because they say you only need a front cinch to ride. That's our number 4 myth. You only need a front cinch to ride. Steve, is that the truth or is that a myth?
That is a myth, and it don't make any difference if it is a mule saddle, you know, my saddle, or a horse saddle. I had a long time ago. I was doing a clinic in Indiana, and I had 5 veterinarians following me around, and I was talking about the scapula and the bone structure and this sort of thing. And one of the things that this guy stood up and said, that he actually does work for the insurance companies, and he does autopsies to see what happened to that horse, that $250,000 horse, and why they had to put it down, and why the insurance companies got to pay all that money out for that horse. All right, now, here's what he said. He said, what happens is they over-tighten the front cinch, and where do you see white spots on a mule, on a horse, on a donkey? You see it right in behind the scapula. Why is that? Because you over-tighten the front cinch, and the back cinch is not there. Now the saddle cantilevers, but if you would take and you would evenly distribute the weight of the saddle and the bars and evenly make those cinches correct, it would work the best. On a horse, absolutely. Snug up the rear cinch, the front cinch. Make it tighter. On the rear cinch, make it snug. A lot of people don't even use a rear cinch, but you better in order to balance the saddle. Why do you think all these Western saddles have 2 rings? They do it to balance the saddle. Now, the English people, they only use 1 cinch, but watch them. Watch them when they ride. You'll see the saddle sitting right up on the scapula. Now, on a horse, yeah, that scapula goes like this. On a mule, that scapula goes like this. So here's what happens, folks. On a mule, every time he comes up, it's going to be hitting the bars of that saddle. That's why you want to set it 2 inches behind the scapula. That's why you don't want to over-tighten the front cinch. That's why you want to have the back cinch the tightest, front cinch loosest. So otherwise, where do you see white spots? It's not from an ill-fitting saddle. It is from you over-tightening the cinch in the front and not using the back one correctly. Simply what it is. Now, why do I have to have a tighter cinch on a mule? Because you look at the front cinch on a mule, it's always at an angle. Always. Because of its hourglass belly. What happens then? That cinch pulls the saddle forward as the mule walks. As the mule walks, every time that rib cage hits that cinch, it brings that saddle forward. Okay? Not only do we have the mule the way he's made, hourglass belly, the way his shoulders are V-shaped, but when the cinch is on there, it's going to pull the saddle forward. So when you over-tighten the cinch, it brings the saddle forward. And on top of that, the white marks. What those white marks are, they are the sweat glands on those hairs that have had too much pressure on them, and they turn white and they're dead. They no longer are working correctly, the hair follicles. So what happens on you horse folks, and you mule folks too, they're using horse saddles because you're over tight. That's what folks do with horses. They tighten the front cinch and let the back cinch either hang, or they don't have it there, or they barely have it up there. It needs to be, those cinches need to be so it balances. So on a rear cinch, it's imperative that rear cinch is the tightest so that it balances the saddle. Once you set the rear cinch into place, now you can adjust your front cinch. Now you can adjust your breast collar, and now you can adjust your breeching. Okay? But that rear cinch is a pivot point. And when you use billets, you see, the reason I use nylon is because, number one, if something breaks, it's usually always a leather latigo at one of the bends. All right? With that nylon, we don't use leather on our seatbelts. That nylon is stronger. Plus, what I like about it, when it gets wet, it's slicker and it goes easier to tighten up the cinch. When leather gets wet, what happens? It binds. So you always think about this when you've been in the rain and you try to snug up a cinch, or if the mule or horse is sweating a lot and you try to tighten it up, that cinch binds. And as that cinch binds, that mule, that horse is blowing air into his lungs to keep you from over tightening the cinches, trying to protect himself. You see? Now, believe me, if I thought that I could just use any old saddle on there, I would be good. But if you walk into any saddle shop and they got all those saddles out there for sale, good saddles, Circle Y saddles, Tucker saddles, lots of different brand name saddles. But guess what? They all use the same trees. Semi-quarter horse and quarter horse. Semi-quarter horse is narrower, full quarter horse is wider. So I've had folks tell me, hey, I need a wider tree. No, you don't, because there's a fat pocket on the mule. And when you go wider, you get up on that fat pocket, and then you got a chance of knocking out a rib. How do I know this stuff? Because I've done it. How do I know this stuff? It's really heartbreaking, folks, to have to shoot one of your favorite mules simply because you screwed him up with the wrong saddle. Okay? Now, I've had people also tell me they've had custom saddles made for their mule. The mule died, and they tried to use that saddle on another mule, and they couldn't do it. Now, you ask people. I got some clients that's got up to 10 of my saddles, and they have these saddles because they work, because they're consistent. I'm not a saddle maker, folks. I design the saddle. Do I have Americans who make my saddles? Yes. Okay. Yes, I do. Okay. And I have saddle shops that do an excellent job that's been doing work for me for years, and they do it exactly as I want. Okay. My saddles are completely different. That's why I tell folks I don't have a mule tree. I have a Steve Edwards tree. So if you're thinking, okay, Steve's saddle is more expensive, why in the world should I buy it when I can buy this mule saddle over there? Well, just look at the saddle and see. It's just some of the things we're talking about here now. And if they got billets on it, it's a horse saddle. If the D-ring in the front is even with the pommel, it's a horse saddle. If the D-ring on the side and the back is farther back, it's a horse saddle. If they got billets on it and it's sewed in the back, it's a horse saddle. Just because they call it a mule saddle, even if they call it a cow saddle, okay? There's some saddle companies out there that have a cow name, and they say it's a mule saddle, okay? So, folks, my saddles are completely different. Don't think that you can take and buy another saddle and say, oh, it's a mule saddle, it'll work. And I can tell you this, back when I first started calling my saddles mule saddles, and I was writing articles for the Western Mule and Mules More magazine, when I was a world champion there at Bishop, California, I told everybody that if you bring me a mule that my tree does not fit on, I will have a saddle made for you for free. And I took my tree and I went from mule to mule to mule to mule. I don't know how many mules I did there at Bishop. Well, the next day when I opened my store to start selling my saddles, people were getting the boxes and standing in line. They saw how it fit. They saw how the D-rings work. I've got all this free information out there, folks, that shows you. Yeah. So there's not another saddle company out there giving you the free information I've got out there now. You can go and get this free information. It's called Mastering the Saddle Fit, free, 6 hours. Look at all that free stuff that's out there. Nobody's out there doing it. Why is that? I want my mule to be comfortable. You got my mule, so you should be taking good care of it. You should be thinking about your donkey, okay? Oh, I'll just get any old saddle. No. You're going to end up having problems. I've already been there, done that, okay? And that's why we're doing this seminar. Dave came up with this idea. It's great because you hear all these myths out there about what works and what doesn't. But we got it lined up right here. You can see videos, all the answers right there, right here for your questions.
All right, folks. You only need a front cinch to ride. I got a video for you here. Take a look at this.
You feel that high spot?
Right.
Now you see how the saddle is right at the edge of that high spot? Probably about 1.5 inches, 2 inches, right?
Right.
Okay, so we want it to be behind you. When we have that, notice the next part. This front cinch is almost 4 inches behind the leg. You see that? Like that. Then the beginning adjustment, this D-ring is going to be this side of center by about 2 inches to maybe 3. All right? I do the back cinch first, then the front cinch. Your front cinch has to be about 3 to 4 inches from the front. This is a nice long backed mule, so it's going to be about 4 inches. And then notice how my back cinch comes right at the sweet spot, right where this just starts to round off and starts to flatten out. It's just about right there, just about the sweet spot. So then we come over here. So I'll bring this up, and I can see that my back cinch needs to be a little bit longer. So I'm going to go ahead and set this up like this. I'm going to go ahead and loosen my cinch up over here. Notice I didn't take my latigos out and go on the ground and then put them back up. I kept them right up here where it's pretty easy for me to keep them clean. I can pull them right out and stick them right in the hole. There to there. Nice and loose, snug. Do we see that? Nice and loose, snug. Now I'm going to leave it alone. Notice on my breeching, it's at an angle. So it follows the hip. It lays flush against the animal. If it's not at an angle, it's going to tip, and you'll get places where it rubs and puts marks across here, and then you know that it's not setting flush. Has to set flush against the animal's back. The quarter straps keep the saddle from going left and right. The back straps help keep the saddle from going forward. Now, remember, as the mule walks, every time that hip comes back, it's going to hit that breeching and say, saddle stay here, saddle stay here. But still, the most important one is right here. This rear cinch really keeps that saddle from going forward more than anything else. But what happens to the cinch? As you're going down the trail, the cinch loosens up, doesn't it? So then you have to depend upon your breeching and your breast collar to help keep the saddle into place.
There we go. Steve, somebody had recently sent in a video or a photo related to a cinch. Why don't you tell us about this photo, and I'll throw it up here.
This lady wanted to know how come her mule lays down when she tightens the front cinch. Well, that's a donkey thing. There's going to be times that donkey part of the mule will come out. What donkeys do to get away from pain a lot and from discomfort, they'll just lay down and just wait. That's what they'll do. That's what this mule does. He's had his front cinch over tightened so much, as soon as he barely feels it on his belly, he just lays down and gets away from it. So folks, look, there are times that, yeah, they'll tell you, they'll show you like this, but just think this mule would never have this problem if somebody would have been correct to start with and put the correct stuff on him, okay? Now listen to all these other saddle makers. Yeah, there's some out there probably got a cheaper saddle, some more expensive, but I've got the experience on these animals and on these saddles, and this one right here is a prime example. We've got the lady, she wrote a letter and wrote an email and said, hey, my mule now is doing better because of your saddle. That's the honest way it goes, Lord.
The fifth myth is a good horse saddle will work for any mule or donkey. Steve, I know this one is a myth. Why don't you tell us why?
Well, mainly because of the way the bars are made, okay? I have a 19.5-inch bar. I done that because I know I can take that bar and put on a short couple mule or a long mule. I could put it on a fat mule or a skinny mule, okay? I could do that, okay? But remember, these animals were designed, these saddles were designed for horses. Now look at my saddle bar. You cannot look at a saddle setting on a mule and say it fits. You have to have the tree to see it fits. Notice the front part of my bar. Notice how it's not touching that area I was talking about that restricts that area. When you tighten your front cinch down, that will be a mess. But notice how my bar, you can slide your hand up underneath there and it takes the pressure off of that scapula and that working area. Now, there's a horse saddle right there. See, it's automatically setting right into the animal's scapula, automatically putting pressure in there because of the way it's made. And the bar is too long too. See, there it is. Okay. You can't get your hand in there. There's no way. And that's the average bar that's on these saddles. Now, this one happens to be semi-quarter horse, so it is narrower. All right. So there it is. Why is your mule shaking his head going downhill? Because that bar is hitting that scapula. That bar is putting pressure on the area. Now, here's the other place where I don't want to be touching. Notice how it's not touching the back of the back. And you remember how the back of my saddle is designed so it comes up. I have no pressure on those kidneys. Remember, the kidneys are hanging down from strings. So I don't want touching that area too. Now, looky there. Look how ill-fitting that is. Okay? That's because the saddle has got such a rock on it. So horse saddles have a twist. And that twist is to go around the scapula of the wither of the mule. And that makes the back of the saddle stick up. So when you put your saddle on there, folks, and you only tighten the front cinch, you'll see the back of the cinch coming up just like that right there, the back of the saddle. That's the way it should look. That should be an even distributed weight and pressure off of the kidneys. The only way you can tell if a saddle fits, only way, is to have the tree setting on there. Now, it's not just the tree. Because once the tree is there, now I have a gaited mule, I have a draft mule, I have a quarter mule, and we got some different muscle structures. And so that's why I designed the skirting the way I did. So it come up in the back so that if I got a mule with a high spine, if it's rounded off on the back and on the front, so it doesn't inhibit the mule's wither or his hip. Now notice, folks, looky here. The bottom one there is a horse skeletal structure. Do you see that? The top one is the mule. Can you see that, folks? That's as plain as can be. Now, we got a little gal in the Netherlands. They've got a museum there, and she took these pictures and was so excited. Look, Steve, I found it. Look at the difference in the rib cage, folks. Look at the difference in the scapula. Look at the difference in the wither. All of that shows you that there's a difference. That's why I fit my saddles to bone structure and not muscle mass. And you can see that. Plain as can be. Plain as can be. You can't get much more simpler than that right there.
Steve, I've got a video here of you going into more depth, showcasing exactly what we just looked at in those pictures. Take a look at this video here.
Now, this is the scapula. The scapula goes up and down like pistons on a car. On a horse, they go horizontal. So one of the things I want you to notice is right here, how the pressure is off of, whoa there, little mule. You're fine. Notice how the pressure is up off of the scapula. So if I put it way up on top of here, it's still on the scapula. I mean, it's on the scapula, but the pressure is not relieved because now we're up on top of it, and every time it comes up, it's going to bang. So you want it to be back here 1.5 inches behind the scapula. Now notice as you look back here in the back, you can see the pressure is off of the spine back here. So you've got relief all the way through, all the way across. If we take and we put a horse tree on there, this is a semi-quarter horse bars. And if you notice, this is rawhide covered. Now the problem with rawhide, as you can see, this tree's never been on a mule or a horse, and I've always just used it for demonstration. Over the years, this is what's happened. So the stitching come undone, the rawhide gets wet, even though it's been coated with a coating to be able to protect it, it still eventually goes away, and then you end up with a saddle tree that's twisted and not doing good. So you take your horse saddle and you put it on there. And the first thing you notice is how it sticks up in the back. Now you don't want pressure in the back, and when I put my other tree, you'll see what I mean. But notice how it sticks up in the back. And notice how it goes right into the scapula, right here. So what people end up doing is they tighten the front cinch only. And when they tighten that front cinch, then you get this. And if you notice, a couple times she switched her tail, wasn't really happy about that. And yes, this has a really, really bad rock. Not bad. But notice when I tighten down the back of it, the front end of it comes up, but we're really tight into the kidneys back here. Where do I want this saddle to actually fit? I don't want it to touch end to end. I want it to be just enough off of kidneys right here, just enough off of here so that when I do have pressure and I set here, see it's still off of the kidneys. And then you add the pad and you add the wool and then you add the skirting and it makes it even better. So now where do I want it to really fit? I want it to fit right here, just enough where when I sit down, that's the only part that is going to be setting on the animal. Why do I not want it to be moving here? I want you to notice this area of the scapula, how it goes up and down. Notice this area, how it's high right now, and then how it'll come down. So I want you to see that when you over tighten the front cinch, what you're doing, what you're distracting, what you're putting pressure on is an area that needs to move. Right in here is where we get a lot of our white hairs because we over tighten the front cinch, or also from the downhill hip, I constantly got pressure here. If we take and we put pressure on here, I am restricting that area. That's why it's important on a mule that the back cinch be the tightest, front cinch be the loosest. We don't want to restrict that area. So now feel the scapula. Down, up, down, up. You feel it? Okay, so when we take and we put our tree and feel this high spot right here, you can also see it, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so when you take, it makes sense to you, right? So when we take and we only use, if we use a horse saddle, we're putting a mega amount of pressure right there. And you can see that on my saddle. Let me bring that tree over here a second. When this tree is sitting over here, look in here.
Oh, you have that gap.
Yep. So I don't have to worry about when my
I don't know if
saddle
y'all
starts
saw
to
that
come
right
ahead.
there. Look, right there. Look at him slide his hand
So I don't have
all
to
the way up
worry
in there.
about when my saddle starts to come ahead. When your saddle can move 1.5 inches forward and back, left and right, no more than that. If it does more than that, it's going to go into the scapula. But notice how my tree, when it comes forward, it doesn't bang into the scapula like that other tree. Bring that other tree over here a second. Now notice the difference. Going right into the scapula. So you're going downhill, that really increases. And when you're only using like a tail crooper and you're not using the rear cinch, the back of this saddle comes up like this, and now it increases it even more. So you're severely restricting this area. Yes, there's a little bit of room here, but all it's got to do is come ahead a little bit.
I thought that was a pretty good clip there, and I thought it demonstrated very well. When he slid his hand right up there at the front, like you can see it. And one of the things that I don't know if people picked up on this, but you said your saddle is going to move. It's not going to stay still the whole time. You want 1.5 inches of movement from the front to the back, right? You want 1.5 inches back with the breeching. There's is like a 1/2 inch with the breeching, and then when you put your hand in there and pull it back, you want it to be 1.5 inches total, and then 1.5 inches total on the breast collar. And the thing is it is going to slide, it is going to move, but when it does on the mule or the donkey, the way the bars are designed is it's going to move that 1.5 inches any more than that, and it's going to come down on the scapula, but given that 1.5 inches, it's going to slide over the scapula just that because we're dealing with a game of almost like millimeters here. We're not dealing with a game of multiple inches, heck no feet. We're dealing with a game of like millimeters, and that millimeter, that centimeter, that can make a big difference. Steve, anything else you want to say about that?
No, that's really good. That's like I told you. There's these saddle companies making excellent saddles. Okay, Circle Wide makes an awesome saddle. There's a lot of good quality saddle makers that make saddles. Okay, and they call them custom saddles. But there is no difference between my saddle makers and them. They still have to sew it the same way, nail it the same way. The big difference between a, quote, custom maker saddle and us is they have to cut every piece out with a knife. It's slower. I have plates. I cut the parts out and I put it with a press. cut out everyone. I can cut out parts for a saddle within 25 minutes. I can have probably 20 saddles parts cut out, and then my saddle makers put them together. Okay, they call there's no such thing as a custom saddle, folks. Okay, it's custom only in one way. It was designed for you, the way it was stamped, the way the colors were, and things like this. Okay, but you can only do so much with a tree. And as I showed you there are key places. I don't want to hear this stuff from these so-called saddle fitters that say this don't fit or that don't fit. Guess what? They don't have an idea about the scapula. I have talked to so many saddle makers and so-called saddle fitters over the years that I have met at expos and this sort of thing, or it's been in my clinics, and I showed them where they were wrong. Okay, just like that last setting right there, showing how that tree should be fitting and where you take the pressure off. No other saddle's got that. None of them out there. Okay, nobody's got the amount of information that we have trying to help you make your animal comfortable.
I want to share with you a few stories that we got, just awesome pictures that got sent in from all across the world. So Steve, check this one out right here. This one is Alberto. Alberto sent this in. He said, Steve, I got my saddle and I absolutely love it. The saddle pad is awesome and the saddle fits perfectly on my mule. Steve, did you travel out to Colombia to measure that mule?
No. No.
By golly, it fits perfectly. You sent it in the mail. It fit perfectly. I love the beta material for the britchin and the breast collar too. I'm eager to do long trails with my new saddle. Here is a picture of me and my mule Guadarrama in Colombia. I thought that was pretty cool. Isn't that neat?
Yeah, that's neat.
Well,
That's
travel
really cool.
with me now all the way to, I think it's Israel here. Steve, here is a picture of me and our 6-year-old mule, Aviv, which means spring in Hebrew, in the high peak of the anemone blossom. The saddle, britchin, and tack fit our mule perfectly. Now, you did go to Israel. Did you meet up with Yuri and measure that mule?
I never measured the mule. I just put the saddle on and away we went. And guess what? It fit. Yeah. And then that is in Israel. Now folks, where else are we going to go here?
How about we go to, let's see here. Wyoming. Let's go to Wyoming. This is Steve.
Whoa.
Here is a picture of my girlfriend Jordan and I riding Opie and Buddy. We're both using your Trail Light saddles and triple duty pads with beta breast collars and breeching. Jordan is using the Mule Riders martingale and I'm using the Trail Rider bit and beta headstall. We're riding in Big Horn Mountains of Wyoming on a 15-mile ride. I like this that he added at the end. All of your products work great and make for happy mules. We tried piecing together old tack and none of it worked. We just made the investment and ditched all the headaches. I like that all right. I thought that was a pretty good one. I got a couple more that I want to share. But folks, I want to let you know we are doing something very special for a limited time only. When you buy your first or your next Steve Edwards signature saddle, we are going to throw in 3 of Steve's saddle videos. Number 1, we're going to throw in Donkey Saddle Foundation training. This is a 5-part video series. There's over 2 hours of training here. We're going to throw in Basic Equitation, Steve's signature training video filmed out here. Actually, this one was filmed at Queen Valley Mule Ranch. That's right. And that's about a 40-minute video. And then we're going to throw in Riding with Confidence and Certainty, Equitation for Mule and Donkey Riders. That's about a 68-minute video that is filmed in an learning environment, much like this, where we've got live clips. We're going to throw in all 3 of those videos when you purchase your first or your next Steve Edwards signature saddle. Travel with me here. I actually don't know exactly where it is, but you can see it somewhere fun. Freddie sent this in and said, I love the saddle. I ride with very loose cinches and my saddle never slips out of place. Plus, it's very comfortable Even when Taz and I were jumping off a rock, the saddle stayed in place. I love that picture. I thought that was pretty cool.
That's in Utah.
There you go. We've traveled to Utah. We've traveled to Wyoming. We've traveled to Colombia. Let's see here. Where do we want to go next? Let's go to wherever Emma is, because she sent in a great picture. Steve, thanks for all your help and advice. Folks are shocked, Steve, when they get you on the phone saying, hey, how's the saddle fitting? What can I do to help you? I had a good experience buying the saddle. Here is a picture of Goliath, our 8-year-old mammoth, with my daughter Emma on board. Both of them find the Trail Light saddle very comfortable. I love that. Here, let's go to Alaska real quick. Trisha sent this in. Hey, Steve, here's a picture of my autistic son, Timothy, on his mammoth donkey, Rosebud, on a beautiful fall day in Alaska. We love our Trail Light saddle and all of the good advice and training resources you provide. Steve, you're very easy to golly, we're going to have to get you a new hat, Steve. You're very easy to understand and follow, even for people like us who don't have any previous mule or donkey experience. I was feeling very overwhelmed when we got our mammoth donkey at first, thinking I had made a huge mistake. So after being talked off the ledge, so to speak, we now have a lovely, safe riding donkey for my son. Thank you. Here's one more, Steve. This one comes from Kristen. Says, we made a huge investment in the full package and are so happy we did. The combination of saddles, pads, breast collar, cinches kept our mule happy and pain-free. We were able to ride without any issue. MuleRanch.com, any saddle purchase, you don't have to buy anything else, any saddle purchase, that's going to give you the 3 videos.
That's a good deal. Appreciate you doing that. Wow, what a show, Dave. You did great.
Steve, we have made it through the entire program. Wow. All 5 myths busted. Steve, anything else you want to say tonight before we say goodbye to our friends?
No, you did good, Dave. Great show. You hit the 5 top ones, and we appreciate it. And we appreciate everybody that's been watching the video. And I know, if y'all got any questions, you can email us or call me, whatever. Be happy to help you out. Thanks a lot, Dave. You did a great job. Happy travels to you. Have a good weekend. Hug them boys for me.
Thanks, Steve. I appreciate that. Folks, let me just give you one more roundup because it couldn't be confusing. For the next 2 weeks, all the way to August 11th, any saddle purchase is going to get you those 3 videos. That amounts to just over $100 in additional value just when you buy a saddle. We really want you to feel like when you get that saddle in the mail, not only are you excited to unwrap it, pull off the shrink wrap, take pictures, put it up on your mule, put it up on your donkey, send photos to friends. We want that for you. But more than that, we want you to feel like when you get in the saddle, you know what you're doing. We work so hard to help you with ground foundation training. When you get in the saddle, we want that training to continue. So we're including those 3 videos. You can get that for the next 2 weeks, August 11th, at the link muleranch.com/summer. Thank you, everyone. We really hope you enjoyed tonight's program. God bless. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and we will talk to you soon. Hey, Steve, we'll see you later.
Hey, happy travels, everybody.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Oh, silly dog.
There goes Jess. Jess.